All right. So in this section, we're going to talk about the class of service of Cisco Unified Communication Manager. So you basically do not want everyone in your office to make calls, right, anywhere they want. For instance, you may have, let's say, in different places like pantry, lobby area, or you can have a shared phone at HR office. You know, you can have then your regular users. Then you can have your phones for on a higher management side. So for managers, for VPs and CEOs, right? And so on. So up the ladders, you can think of anything. So uh, you certainly do not want everybody in pantry or lobby to make calls internationally, maybe, or to certain special numbers that are chargeable. You want to restrict them, right? Similarly, you do not want HR office to be limited for local calls or national calls, but you may want them to be restricted in terms of international calls. So let me bring it here. So I already prepared certain calling privileges class of service that I can talk about. So what you may do is beforehand you plan for certain calling privileges and what all will be allowed destinations, right? So for instance, internal calling, you would say, you know what, I can assign I can allow internal and emergency calls. For instance, internal means anyone within the organization. All right, so I would say commence, and let me take this away for now, somewhere down the line, down below, so that it doesn't create any confusion. So yeah, so you want internal calling that its allowed destinations are internal and emergency. For instance, internal would be anyone within the organization. So you do want that people with privilege of internal calling can dial internally, but they also should be capable enough of dialing emergency numbers. For instance, for the US, it's 911, and for various countries, the code is different, right? Maybe, for instance, the emergency number is 100 in India, and so on. So you may want that anybody with even internal calling has got at least two basic stuff, which is internal and emergency. Uh, in similar way, you want local calling to be allowed. Uh, for instance, maybe within the same city, same state. In addition to internal and emergency, you definitely want uh, within the state sort of permission, that you do not want the trunk calls, the national calls, even though now these things are pretty much being normalized these days, that you do have got all the states, regardless of the destination, free or at the same price. But earlier times, local calls and long distance calls used to have different rates. Sometimes local calls were also chargeable, and long distance calls were chargeable even more or even higher, right? So you have got the restrictions in place, even in many countries, right? So local calls, and then similarly, you can plan for uh, another level of privilege, which is long distance, right? And you could say, okay, so this guy here, apart from internal emergency and local calls, can also dial long distance calls. So this is in addition. Just for local calling, we added local. For long distance, we added, in addition to internal emergency and local, the fourth one, which is long distance calls. So it's like within the country, right? So here within the state, I mean within the city or state, like a local area, and it's like the entire country, entire nation. Uh, and in a similar fashion, you have got even higher privilege to let the people dial internationally, right? So what you do here is in addition to internal emergency, local, and long distance, you want to add international. And for obvious reason, for those people who have got access of international calling, you definitely do not want them to be not able to make long distance or local calls. For obvious reason, if they have got higher tier privilege, you do not want to restrict them for the lower tier privileges as well. So it's like anything outside, you know, the country, uh, internationally, for instance, from USA to maybe somewhere in the Europe or somewhere in Australia, Russia, Asia, anywhere, right, outside the country. Special privileges you may have, you know, apart from uh, these regular stuff, internal, emergency, local, long distance, and international, there are some numbers which are chargeable, and they provide uh, you know, some special services, right? You call them uh, doctors on phone or emergency services, or many entertainment related stuff out there. So they're chargeable. You do not want everyone to have that privilege that they call from those special numbers to and the company pays for them. In addition to that, you have got toll-free numbers as well. So toll-free numbers are like 1-800 number, wherein the caller is not charged, but the one uh, who has provided this facility is basically paying for that call. So for special calling privilege, you may want to include even international calls. So because they're special, right? So you can do, whoever has got special calling privilege can dial international, toll free, special, local, long distance, emergency, internal, everything. So this is the highest tier. You can name anything here, by the way. This is just for our own understanding. Uh, and I have kept it as simple as it could be. So, it's easier to understand. So special numbers, toll-free numbers, international PSTN, it's all allowed to this guy here. Whoever has got the special calling feature will definitely have that. It makes sense to those people who have got international calling privilege also have special and toll-free added right here. So at this place. Uh, and this is just a planning sheet. We'll now go ahead and try implementing it in the call manager, and just to let you have that feeling how to do it basically. But just to give you a glimpse of how you can plan ahead and discuss this with the company that you're working for, you're planning it for, and can talk about what privilege shall you give to whom, right? So at CXO level, right, the privileges must be something like special calling, obviously, and up till the managers as well. So you should have them the class of service assigned as special calling. The users are like normal employees in your company, and you want to restrict them to long distance calls, right? And you for HRs as well, you're okay with long distance. For lobby, you may decide that okay, it's pretty much fine that you allow people dial local calling, and for pantry, you do not want any call to go outside the organization except emergency. So, you know, based on users, or you would say areas, yeah, what class of service applies for pantry, internal, lobby, local, HR, long distance, and then you have got other departments like finance and then the rest of the department, right? So based on it, yeah, you can discuss it with the company that you're building it for, wherever you're working as an administrator or your client, and then talk about that, what privileges you want to give to which user. All right, so let's quickly jump into the call manager and you know try defining it. Okay, so to go to the class of service in Cisco Unified Communication Manager, you have got call routing field, wherein you have got class of control. Okay, so it's second tab, and then you have got class of control, and then you have got partition and calling search space. We're going to talk about access list, time period, and time schedule later on, but I want you to start with CSS, which is calling search space, and partition. Okay, so let's start with partition here. So partitions are basically a group of numbers that it's an area, right, that you define. Okay, uh, for instance, let's go back to the sheet here. These are the partitions. Okay, the group of destinations that you want the callers to uh, you know reach, basically. So these are the partitions that we may create all in one go. So let me just add them in the notepad and put a comma, uh, because CUCM allows you to add multiple entries uh, as long as they are separated from commas. Toll free, international. All right, so just need to do a little bit of stretching. All right, so I'm going to go back to the call manager and say, it says to enter multiple partitions, use one line for each partition entry. Okay, so we're, since it's a basic configuration, it does not have this call manager cluster does not have enough configurations. It's a brand new server. So I would say that instead of just adding the name of the groups that we want to create, yeah, let's add a word BT. It's a good practice always to have the names as they are. Yeah, so let's say local PSTN underscore PT. So PT would stand for your partition. So let me just add that at the end of every partition that we want to create, because that looks more meaningful when you come and take a look at it. And even if you're not there in the organization, anyone can understand what is what, right? So internal PT, emergency PT, local PSC, and PT. So these are the partition that we're creating, right? So we're gonna just say save, and let's see what happens. Right, so they say description must be less than 50 characters in length. So it says that use one line for each partition entry. All right, so I'm gonna save. All right, so I'll have to use a comma to separate the name and description. Oh yeah, so you do not need the uh, comma to separate between two partitions, but the comma to separate between the name and the description. All right, so it's even better. I forgot that this is how it is. So what we could do is take it into the notepad and can define internal internal partition, and then we could say this guy here is emergency partition, and this one here is local PSTN partition. This is long distance PSTN partition. This is special partition, and I'll take the toll free to the next line here, and say toll free partition, and say comma, and international PSTN partition. So PSTN stands for Plain Switch Telephone Network. So we're good with the name, comma, description here. So let's do a save here and see if that works. So seems it has taken it all right. We've pretty much created these all partitions. So these are the ones ending with PT that we created. Okay. Now, if you see directory URI that was created before, I created the normal manual entries, you would see the dependency records from this related link down here, and can do a go and could see that this feature is disabled, but you could see that how many devices are using this partition. All right, so let's go back to the partition. And now, right, these directory, these partitions that we created that can be assigned to devices, right? Like I said, that it's group of directory numbers or numbers where you assign this partition. So now it's time for us to create the calling search space, okay, and assign the partitions to them. So it's like creating the calling search space the way we planned it in our book, right? So let's create it this way. I would create the first one and call it internal CSS. I would not say internal calling, I would say internal CSS. That stands for internal calling search space. So I'll say this is going to be internal calling. Okay. Now, as planned, right, we need to give it only two privileges, two partitions, which will be internal and emergency. So I'm gonna select internal PT, and then you have got your emergency PT right here down below. So the device where I will assign this calling search space will have the capability to dial internal PT and emergency PT. All right, so then I have to create a couple of more: local, long distance, international, and special. So 4 more. So I can do add new, or I can copy this as well. So I can just gonna go ahead and copy, so it would have these two selected partitions already in place, and all I need to do is just do local CSS, and I would say, all right, so this guy here is one more level up, local calling search space. And I would say, okay, you can dial local PSTN as well, apart from internal and emergency. Now let's create the others as well. I would say copy, and long distance, right? I'm gonna go ahead and say, okay, this guy here would be long distance CSS, and I'm gonna say this is to make long distance calls. So whichever device has got long distance CSS, we'll have internal, emergency, local, and long distance calling as well. Okay. Similarly, we'll have it copied for international. Right. I'm gonna create international CSS, and I would say international calling search space, and I'm gonna add that partition. So international CSS capability will allow the user to dial internal, emergency, local, long distance, and even international. Right. So, and we can then create the special one and can add all of them that we wanted. Right. So we can say, all right, this guy here is the topmost CSS. So it will have special, toll-free, international, everything. So it has got a character limit, so I would say toll-free, international, long distance, and local. This way, any device which has got special CSS assigned to it will have all the privileges. So this is the highest sort of privilege that you want a user to be given. So apart from the earlier partitions, we have also added the remaining ones. So it has got everything that a high tier user can have. All right, so we created different CSS. Now it's a time for us to assign it to the device. So we'll go to the device, go to the phone, and then we are gonna do a find here. Or if we know the device name already, we can just put it there. Or we're gonna say CSF user 001, that's my test user. And I'll go ahead and say, okay, so you're in no partition. That's not good. So first of all, I'm gonna put you in a partition, which will be internal partition. Keeping an end user in no partition is not really a good idea. So no partition means the none partition, that anybody and everybody can call this person. Right? There's no restriction to it. Well, we do not want to do that. That at least that as a standard practice, that every directory number that you have in your communication manager server must have a route partition, and you can have your calling search space given on the line level. So we are on the directory number level of the configuration, and you have got, if you just keep scrolling a little, you would see calling search space. What privilege do we want this user to have? So let's say we want to give it special CSS. So this way, we are literally allowing this user to have internal, emergency, local, long distance, special, toll free, and international. So everything, right? So he can call internal, externally to the level of international, can call special numbers, toll free numbers, and so on. All right, so there is one more place that works in coherence with the calling search space configuration that you can configure, and this is on the device level, the CSS. You can come down here and you could say, okay, you want to give the device level internal CSS, okay? But you remember on the line level, we have assigned the even more privileges like special and international and long distance and so on. But on the device level, we are just assigning internal CSS. The purpose of this could be that you do not want all the lines. If you take a note right on the left hand side, you have got multiple lines, right? So on line 2, you may not want the user to have the similar privilege. You just want this user, this is line 2, and I want to give this user maybe just local calling or long distance calling, but no international calling allowed from uh, you know, for this user on line level, right? So you can have different level of privileges in terms of calling. Uh, let's say this user does not have a special calling feature, but restricted to local CSS, right? So it will have this line, right? Will work in coherence. So what you have assigned here, calling search space on the line level, plus what you have got assigned uh, on the calling search space for the device level. If you do a union, right? So internal CSS and uh, internal CSS and local CSS. So this user will have a union, and extension 2000 will be able to call internal, emergency, and local as well. So you want to keep on the device level as common as possible. So whatever at least you want to give the caller would be assigned on the device level, and what maximum you want to give the caller as privilege can be assigned on the directory number levels on the line level. So this is pretty much it about the calling space and partition. Now we can go ahead and talk about a bit more, right, on the other configurations like access list, time period, and time schedule. But just to demonstrate on, on, on this file here, that calling search space and partition can do what. For instance, we assign the local user uh, a user with extension uh, 1001, right? The special calling capability, right? And let's say there is one more user that we assign uh, only local calling privilege, right? Local CSS. Now, can the user 001 dial user 2001? So to know it, let's see what do we have under special calling and what do we have under local calling. And moreover, we need to know what partitions they are into. So this guy here is under internal PT, and similarly this guy here is also under internal PT, right? So under special calling CSS that we created, right? We called it special CSS, right? So I would say, okay, let's name it the same way, and we call the uh, I think we called it local PSTN CSS. So let's call it this way, all right? And let's see how we plan. So for user 001, uh, the extension 1001, right? User 1, I would say, with extension 1001 was in internal partition, and the calling privilege was assigned to be CSS, special CSS. And user 2 with extension 2001 was also part of internal partition, but with a bit low calling source space, right? So if someone asks you, can user 1 dial user 2? So you would say, okay, let's see what CSS does user 1 has. So user 1 has got special CSS. So this guy here is calling, and this is called, all right? Or you could say in different verb, callee, and this guy here is uh, sorry, this guy is callee, and this is the caller. Okay, or these are the terminologies that you should be aware of. A party, sometime they're also referred as. So I'm just giving you the technical jargon so you're aware of what are the, you know, the way that people call it. So they would say, okay, there is a caller, user one, and there is a callee, user two, or A party, B party, or calling, call, and so on. Different ways of calling the same thing. So calling number is user one with external extensions 1001, which is internal partition and has got the privilege of special CSS. Now, what capability this user has will be defined with this calling search space. So, all right, so can this user dial user 2? To answer that, let's see what do we have under special CSS. So special calling search space has got internal. Yes, so we have got this user under internal. So definitely user 2 is an internal PT. So user 1 with special CSS can definitely call user 2 because it is allowed, right? Now imagine, let's say there is another user, user 3, and just a text example 3001 in, let's say it's in which PT? Let's say international PT, just for the sake of understanding. Okay. Now I'm gonna change the call. I would say, this. This is the in this example the calling party or caller or A party is this guy here, user two, and the called party. Okay, or you would say callee, or it's a bit funny that different organizations use it differently, but this is how it is, right? So this, in the second example, we have got uh, user 2 with local PSD and CSS capabilities, dialing, right? User 3 with extension 3001, which is an international partition. So will this call succeed? Let's see. Local PSD and CSS has got what? Internal, emergency, and local. Does it have international PT, international partition? No, we did not plan it this way. So this caller can never call user 3, right? Yes, maybe you have this user 3 as someone uh, who do not want to be disturbed by anyone. So he has asked that, okay, I'm the finance head, right? I do not want people to call me at my official number except, uh, you know, whom I allow the calls to be entertained. All right, so I hope you got the fair idea how CSS and partition works. So the calling source space, again, is the privilege that what all groups, what all partition that you can call, and the partition uh, is something that who can call you, right? If you're an international partition, only those calling source space who have got it will be able to call, and those who do not have international partition will not be able to call uh, the call number, the party here. Okay, so this is the purpose of defining the uh, calling source space and partition on the phones, on devices that you have registered in the call manager. Now, as we move on to access list and time period, time schedule, right? Let's take time period and time schedule now, and then in the end we'll talk about access list. So let's go to time period. So this is the place where you define a certain time to be associated with the partitions. You do not want a partition to be reached all the time. For instance, you do not want everybody calling internationally beyond 10 p.m. or anybody calling special numbers after 6 p.m. For any reason. So you can come down here and define the time period. So class of control, time period, and in this cluster there is only one time period, that is all the time, and if we click on it, we would see that it is scheduled for uh, Sunday to Saturday. That means it covers pretty much all the day, yeah, all the 7 days. And then you have got what time it starts with. It starts the day at 00 midnight and then ends at 24. So it is like throughout the day, throughout the year, it's you know, active. But you want a partition uh, that is only active for business hours. Let's say 9 to 5 p.m. 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So you could come down here and you could say, all right, so I want this to be active from 9 a.m. and then you could go all the way till 5 p.m. right? And what all day? No, I do not want this to run from Sunday to Saturday, but I only want it to happen Monday to Friday. And then I could save it. This time period is defined here. Now is the time for us to define the time schedule as well before we apply it to the partition. So just like partition, we have got time schedule as well. One predefined, which is all the time, and if you click on it, you would see that, all right, it has got selected time periods all the time. Okay, you can have under one time schedule multiple time periods. For instance, you want to cover 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. or you also want to cover, let's say if you have got a partition, you have got a time period like 10 to 12, 10 p.m. to 12 p.m. You can also accommodate. So it's like adding multiple time period in one schedule, right? Now, if you go back to the partition here and say, all right, I do not want the special partition to be reachable all the time. So you could say, all right, what you do is schedule the time schedule. So since we did not define any schedule for the business hours, we are not getting that option. And the only option we have got is all the time. So let's go ahead and create that. So time schedule. And I would say add new. All right, so this one here is uh, business hours schedule. Description, business hours, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And we do not want multiple time periods to be added. All we want is this business hours 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. added here. And we left all the time period into available time periods. We did not selected it. We only selected this one here with this drop arrow. And now let's go ahead, and as we discussed that we want to assign the partition, special partition, to this time period. So we're gonna have it special PT and the time schedule business hours only. So now any phone, right, which has got special partition assigned on it will only and only be reachable during the business hours. Okay, it will not be able to reach. So any phone, right, which has got special partition, right, will never be reachable beyond 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. So let's say we create a phone, or we use user 2, right, this CSF user 002, and it has got extension 1002, and we say, all right, extension 1002, we do not want you to be in no partition, but we want you to be under a special partition. So this special partition will now restrict the callers to make a call on 1002 beyond 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. The call will go to the voicemail. All right, so let's go back to the sheet. Right, let's say now the call party is uh, here, uh, user 4 with extension 1002. And let's say this guy here is our CEO or CTO. We assigned it under special partition, right? Uh, Now, any user, let's say in our example again, uh, user one, okay, is the calling user who has got the special calling source space. So special calling source space definitely has got special partition. We see that, okay, special calling CSS. We included as part of the planning to have special CSS. Uh, so that means that our user one as a calling party can definitely dial user 4 extension 1002 under special partition. But then let's say the time is beyond 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Let's say it's 6 p.m. Can user 1 dial user 4 at the time, let's say 6 p.m.? No. The user now is restricted not to dial beyond 6 p.m. So we pretty much restricted the caller. All right, so this is what we have achieved with the help of time period and time schedule. We created time period, defined the times, and then under the schedule we defined different periods, and then after that we assign the partition into it. So we went to the partition and assigned the timings, right? So right here, the time schedule we assign to the partition. I'm just reverting the change so that special PT, the special partition group, is reachable all the time. It's not restricted to 9 a.m. and 5 p.m. Okay, so with CSS, let's talk about the access list as well. What do we have here to offer? So we can restrict the users in terms of their remote destination number. So there's a feature called remote destination where uh, basically you allow the people to make an incoming call to your office number uh, and right which and then let me just add the description here, then we can talk about it. So basically you want that user 001 should be able to forward the call to its cell phone number in case someone dials its extension. So we'll say, okay, I want user 01, okay, to be allowed to let the calls go to his cell phone when someone dials his office number 1001. So this way I'm creating an access list that, okay, I have him here that, okay, you can let your remote destination here that you define be allowed. We can talk about the remote destination later on, but since we're talking about the class of service, uh, it's a restriction or privilege that from here as well you can allow the caller to have the call going to their remote destination, whether it's allowed or blocked. You can do it from here. So pretty much it in terms of calling privilege. We have covered calling source space partitions. We created a couple of partitions. We created a couple of calling source space, assigned the partitions under the calling source space. We talked about time period. and time schedule. And then in the end, we talked about access list. So, all right. I hope with this you'll have a clear understanding of the purpose and how do we achieve uh, various privileges uh, by call routing under call cluster control. So with this, I'm gonna end this session here and hope to see you in the next session. Thank you.